Ever feel like history class just skims the surface, like you never get the full story?
Yeah, totally.
Well, today we're going deep, way deep, into the life of John D. Rockefeller.
This should be interesting.
Not just the oil tycoon, not just the billionaire, but the man himself.
And you've brought along his Wikipedia page.
Exactly. Excerpts, at least. But honestly, it's amazing how much intriguing stuff they pack into, what, a couple of pages?
Right. It's like a condensed life story with all the good bits highlighted. Perfect for a deep dive.
Okay, so close your eyes. Imagine it. Rural New York, 1839. Little John D. is growing up, part of this big family, bustling household. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
His dad goes by Devil Bill,
Oh.
a con man.
Oh, wow. Seriously?
Dead serious. The guy was notorious, which makes you wonder, right, what kind of influence did that have on young John D.?
Absolutely. Talk about a formative environment.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you've got Devil Bill with his, let's call him flexible business ethics.
Right, cutthroat, maybe even a little shady.
Exactly. But then you've got his mother, Eliza, deeply religious, a devout Baptist, trying to hold it all together.
Talk about a study in contrasts. You almost wonder, did John D. get his business smarts from his father?
Right. But maybe that sense of, I don't know, morality or at least outward piety from his mother.
It's interesting. The article mentions him donating 6% of his earnings to charity as a teenager. Before oil, before the billions.
See, that's what's so fascinating. It wasn't a one-time thing. Like that impulse to give back, it seems like it was ingrained early on, became a core value.
Almost like he was balancing the scales somehow. Which makes you think about those early jobs he had, selling candy, raising turkeys. It's like he was always hustling.
Absolutely. Classic entrepreneur in the making. You can almost see how those experiences shaped him, honing those instincts, learning to manage money, spot opportunities.
Right, that drive, that resourcefulness.
Yeah.
And then boom, Civil War hits.
Changes everything.
Rockefeller's brother's off fighting, but John D. did essential for the war effort by himself.
Did he even consider enlisting? Do we know? He claimed he wanted to, said someone had to keep the family business afloat. And, kerosene, what his refineries were making, that was essential for lighting back then. Huge demand during the war.
So already making serious bank. But this is where his, obsession with efficiency really kicks in.
Obsession, yeah, that's a good word for it. The Wikipedia page really drives this home, the way it talks about how wasteful other oil refiners were.
Just throwing money away, basically.
Pretty much. But Rockefeller, he saw opportunity in everything. It wasn't just about refining oil. It was squeezing every last drop of profit out of it.
Finding uses for the byproducts, streamlining production, even, get this, building his own barrels because it was cheaper.
The man was relentless. Always thinking ahead, always looking for an edge.
Which is how he gets to 1870, the founding of Standard Oil. And this is where things get really, really interesting.
Here we go.
Because he starts using some, let's just say, creative tactics to take control of the industry.
Creative might be putting it mildly.
Right. Like what happens during the Cleveland Massacre? I mean, can you imagine? Buys out 22 of his competitors in just 4 months.
Ruthless. The negotiations, the pressure, how do you even pull that off?
That's not just business. That's a hostile takeover 19th century style. Rebates, underselling, secret deals with the railroads. Rockefeller was playing hardball.
And winning. But here's where we start to see that double-edged sword. Yeah, his efficiency ultimately brought oil prices down, made it affordable for the average person.
Right.
But he also created this massive monopoly, and that's where the controversy really explodes.
And that is a whole other chapter in the John D. Rockefeller story. So Rockefeller's built this massive oil empire, but you got to wonder, at what cost? Sounds like the backlash is pretty intense.
You have no idea. By the late 1800s, Standard Oil was like public enemy #1 for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And for good reason, don't get me wrong. The Wikipedia article, it uses the word monopoly, and they're not messing around. At their peak, these guys controlled something like 90% of the oil refining and the sales, too, in the entire U.S. Can you believe that? 90%. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around that kind of control.
It's mind-boggling. Try to think of a modern equivalent. It's tough.
Right, and that's the thing. We got to remember the context, right?
Yeah.
This is the Gilded Age, robber barons everywhere, cutthroat competition, barely any regulations to speak of.
The Wild West of, oil.
Exactly. So yeah, Rockefeller was a product of his time, no doubt. But that doesn't make all those tactics well.
Right. Not exactly ethical.
Not exactly. I mean, we're talking underselling to crush the competition, those secret deals for transportation, even corporate espionage. Not something they teach in business school today.
Okay, maybe some of it.
Yeah.
But point is, not exactly a squeaky clean record.
Far cry from selling candy, that's for sure. But that ruthlessness, combined with this undeniable business genius, well, that's how he built Standard Oil into what it was. And everyone was starting to notice, too. The article, it quotes some newspapers from back then, calling Standard Oil, get this, the most cruel, impudent, pitiless, and grasping monopoly that ever fastened upon a country. Talk about a scathing review.
They didn't hold back.
Nope. Public opinion was definitely shifting. But here's a funny little tidbit from the article. It gives you a slightly different perspective on the guy. Get this. Rockefeller, with all his wealth, all the threats against him, he insisted on taking the public elevated train to work every day.
Wait, seriously? No private carriages, no entourage?
Nope. Can you imagine the richest man rubbing shoulders with everyday folk?
Maybe it was a publicity thing, trying to seem relatable.
Could be. He was definitely image conscious. Maybe it was calculated. Maybe he just, I don't know, wanted a little slice of normalcy in his crazy life. Who knows? But one thing's for sure, it didn't stop the critics. And then came Ida Tarbell.
Oh yeah, she did not mess around.
Nope. The History of the Standard Oil Company. Published in 1904, and it was explosive. Meticulously researched, full of dirt, all this hard evidence of Standard Oil's shady practices.
She exposed everything.
Pretty much, and the public, they ate it up. That must have stung, even for a guy like Rockefeller.
Yeah, you can't buy that kind of bad press. How did he react?
Publicly, he downplayed it, of course. But you know, he felt the heat. This was a turning point, at least according to the article. He started talking to the press more, trying to, soften his image a little.
Too little, too late.
Maybe. Because then the legal battles started heating up.
Right, the government finally stepped in.
Exactly. The Sherman Antitrust Act, 1890, that was designed to prevent monopolies, specifically ones like Standard Oil. And then, 1911, the Supreme Court, they hand down this landmark decision saying, yep, Standard Oil, you're guilty, you gotta break up.
The beginning of the end for Rockefeller's reign over oil.
You'd think so, right? But get this, it actually made him richer. He still had shares in all the new companies that were born from the breakup and their combined worth. It skyrocketed.
Talk about unintended consequences.
Right, the irony is almost too much. But okay, gotta remember, Standard Oil, that wasn't his only game. The Wikipedia article, it mentions Colorado Fuel and Iron, this mining company.
Right. I wanted to ask about that.
And this is where things get, if possible, even more complicated. See, CF&I, it was a mess. Labor unrest, terrible conditions culminating in this awful event, the Ludlow Massacre, 1914. Striking miners, their families attacked, people killed, women, children, just horrific.
Awful situation.
Yeah.
What was Rockefeller's connection to all this? He owned the company, right?
He was a major shareholder, yeah. Not involved in the day-to-day, but still, a lot of people blamed him for the conditions that led to the massacre.
Yeah, tough to escape that kind of association.
Exactly. So we've got this, complicated picture emerging. Ruthless businessman, target of public outrage, but then also this philanthropist. It's a lot to unpack.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile these different sides of John D. Rockefeller? What made the man tick?
The million-dollar question, isn't it? And luckily, the Wikipedia article, it gives us a few more clues. We'll dive into those in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've seen John D. Rockefeller, the tycoon, the philanthropist, but who was he, really? Like, the man behind the money. What made him tick?
It's the question, isn't it? Behind all the headlines, the scandals, the donations, who was John D.? And, the Wikipedia article, it does offer some hints.
Yeah.
Like his marriage, for instance. Marries Laura Spellman, 1864. They were together over 50 years. Over 50.
Wow. That's a lifetime, especially back then. Not exactly common.
Right. And what's interesting is he actually admitted that Laura, she had better judgment than him. Like, he valued her opinion.
Huh. So a real partnership then, not just some society-wide situation. Makes you wonder he came from such a chaotic family, right?
Total opposite. Maybe he craved that stability, that loving home life, and tried to create it for himself.
Interesting thought. Almost like that need for order, for control. We see it in his business. Maybe it spilled over into his personal life, too.
Could be. Trying to create the family he never had. And then there's the religion. Big part of his life, according to the article.
Yeah, devout Baptist, right, like his mother.
Exactly, instilled in him from a young age. And Rockefeller, he firmly believed, truly believed, his wealth was a gift from God. And that came with responsibilities.
Had to use it wisely.
Precisely. Dedicated churchgoer, taught Sunday school, huge donor to religious causes. It wasn't just for show.
Which brings us back to that famous motto of his.
Yeah.
Gain all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. Man, what a statement.
Right. It's all there, isn't it? The ambition, the discipline, but also that belief in giving back. You almost wonder, did he see those things as like interconnected, parts of the same whole?
Especially as he got older. Because he retires at 63, right? But he doesn't just like disappear onto a golf course.
Oh no, retirement for John D. Rockefeller was a whole other ballgame. That's when the real change-making began, wouldn't you say?
Totally. Like his philanthropy, it went into overdrive. And it wasn't just writing checks either. This guy, he built institutions. The University of Chicago, Rockefeller University, the Rockefeller Foundation. I mean, these are still powerhouses today.
Legacy projects, not just charity, but investments in the future, education, medicine, scientific research. He was shaping the world even after stepping away from oil.
And you can't forget the impact on public health. Eradicating hookworm in the South, for example. That's huge.
Massive. And again, it wasn't just about treating the disease. It was about systems, public health, infrastructure, education. Fix the root cause, not just the symptom. Very Rockefeller when you think about it.
Totally. He was always playing the long game. Like that quote about the University of Chicago, the best investment I ever made. You can tell he was proud of that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. He understood that true wealth, it's not just about money, right? It's about impact, what you leave behind. And yeah, that often gets overshadowed by the oil, the business battles, but it's there.
So where does this leave us? We've got John D. Rockefeller, the ruthless tycoon, the target of all this outrage. But then also this devout family man, this incredibly generous philanthropist. It's a lot.
It is. And that's the thing about history, right? It's messy. People are complicated. Rockefeller, he embodies that perfectly.
Makes you think, if he were around today, how would he be judged? What would he make of the world we live in now? Something to ponder, I guess, as we finish up our deep dive into the life of John D. Rockefeller. One thing's for sure, the guy was never boring.
That he was not.
Thank you for listening. If you love history, don't forget to subscribe to History with Bree and Peter. Join us for more fascinating stories from the past. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode.